Shalom. First off, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Baharuch HaKodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS who have taught us this word and teach us this word today. And I want to give a salutation unto the elect of the nation of Israel. This is the brother Yatazakba from the GMS Nebraska camp. This is GMS Endeavor. And in this lesson, I want to go into the law of redeeming the firstborn. And this is a law that stems from the Passover. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it without further ado. So this is Exodus chapter 11 and verse 4. It says, and Moses said, thus said the Lord Yahweh, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts. And so, this was the 10th and final plague that that the Lord brought upon the land of Egypt. And the reason why he was bringing these plagues was, because, his people, the nation of Israel were in captivity under the Egyptians. And so, the Lord was bringing these plagues so that, he would cause the Pharaoh to let his people go. So like it 1 second. So the Lord was bringing, these plagues so that, Pharaoh would let his people go, but he was also bringing these plagues so that his power and his might would be shown, that glory would be brought to his name, and that the nations would see that the one and true power was dealing with the nation of Israel. You can read in Romans chapter 9, verse 17 through 18 that, during them other 9 plagues, where Pharaoh would, have his mind where he would think about letting us go, the Lord will harden his heart that he wouldn't let us go, so that the Lord could bring more plagues and show his power even more, so that his name could be declared on the earth. So this plague here, this final one he brought was a mighty work, because when you put yourself in the shoes of the Pharaoh, or in the shoes of a king in general, your firstborn son is your heir. Once you die, you pass your kingdom down to him. So he was taking that from Pharaoh. But it says that he didn't do that with just the Pharaoh. He did that with all the Egyptians, that he was going to take their firstborn. And so, your firstborn son, he receives the birthright. This is a significant thing that the Lord was doing. And that's your firstborn son, man. Like that's your kid. And the Lord went through the land and took the firstborn sons from all the Egyptians. That's a fearful work. That's a mighty work. That's a great plague that the Lord brought upon the Egyptians. So let's read verse 6. It says, and there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it anymore. So this was a fearful thing that the Lord did. Now, in Exodus chapter 12, the Lord gave the Israelites instructions for the Passover. And what the Passover did was give the Israelites protection from the plague that he was bringing upon the Egyptians. And when you go into all the plagues, the Lord always protected Israel, but he smote the Egyptians. When you go into, when the Lord turned the water into blood, the Israelites still had clean water. When you can read about the plague when the Lord brought darkness upon the land of Egypt, the town that the Israelites were in, we still had light. So the Lord was protecting us through and through all these plagues, even until this final plague. So this was the instruction. Exodus chapter 12, verse 21. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, draw out and take you a lamb according to your families, and kill the Passover. And so, we were instructed to kill the Passover lamb and collect this blood. And what does it say? It says, and ye shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin. So hyssop, it's this plant here. You would take a bunch of this plant and dip it in the blood. It says, and strike the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin. So you would paint that blood on the two side posts of the door and on the top post of the door. It says, and none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning, for the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians. And when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door. Right, so this is where the name comes from, Passover. And that blood represented, protection over our homes. That blood was represented to the death angel that the Lord was sending. Hey, I'm an Israelite. Don't get us. It showed that we received the instruction, and we pass over unto the Egyptians and get them. Because the Lord only gave this instruction unto the Israelites. The Egyptians didn't get this heads up that this plague was about to come, and instruction on how to avoid getting smoked by it. Only the Israelites received this, so none of the Israelites were harmed. So it says, and will not suffer the destroyer to come in into your houses to smite you. Now, this act here is where the law of redeeming stems from, because with this, let's read Exodus chapter 13 and verse 11. It says, and it shall be when the Lord shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites, as he sware unto thee and to thy fathers, and shall give it thee. Right, so that land, speaking about, our holy land, the land of Israel, which was once the land of Canaan, but we took it from the Canaanites under the command of the Most High Yahweh, and took it for our own. And it says, that thou shalt set apart unto the Lord all that openeth the matrix. Right, so what's the matrix? The matrix goes into the Hebrew word 7358, which is racham, which is the womb. So it says, thou shalt set apart unto the Lord all that openeth the matrix, and every firstling that cometh of a beast which thou hast. The males shall be the Lord Yahweh's. Why? Because it's basically, we owe the Lord from the protection that he gave our firstborn sons during the Passover. Since the Lord provided that protection and he smote the Egyptians, but he protected us, now, the firstborn belonged to him. We owe that to him. So this is where the redeeming comes in. To redeem is to buy back. So let's get it. It says, and every firstling of an ass thou shalt redeem with the lamb, and if thou wilt not redeem it, then thou shalt break his neck. So first is talking about the firstborn of your unclean animal, which right here is speaking of the ass or the donkey, and so as a matter of fact, Salakia, let's get into Numbers 18 first, and then we'll come back to Exodus chapter 13. Bible Gashab, bear with me. Exodus chapter 18 and verse 14. So as it said in Exodus 13, this was something that we would keep once we were in our land and set up. And in Numbers 18, it's reiterating this same law unto us. And this is when we're set up in our land. This is, speaking unto the priests here in Numbers 18 and 14. Everything devoted in Israel shall be thine. Everything that openeth the matrix and all flesh, which they bring unto the Lord, whether it be of men or beasts, shall be thine. Nevertheless, the firstborn of man shalt thou surely redeem, and the firstling of unclean beasts shalt thou redeem. And then in verse 17 is speaking of the firstling of the clean beast as well. So you had three classes of your firstborn male. You had the firstborn son, you had the firstborn of clean beasts, and you had the firstborn of unclean beasts. Now, for the firstborn son and for the firstborn of your unclean beasts, you could go and you would go redeem them. So let's read verse 16. It says, and those that are to be redeemed from a month old shalt thou redeem, according to thine estimation, for the money of 5 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary, which is 20 gerahs. So the firstborn son, you had to go and redeem your son. That's why in verse 15 it says, the firstborn of man, thou shalt surely redeem them. That firstborn son was owed to the Lord, and you had to go buy him back. You had to give a payment, as a redeeming, as a payment to the Lord, for what we owed to him for protecting us during, the time in Egypt, during the Passover. We had to put that payment down. And for all the firstborn sons in the land of Israel, you had to go and make that payment, that 5 shekels. That was something that you must do. That's why it says, thou shalt surely redeem. But for the unclean beasts, you could redeem them, but you didn't have to. That's why instead of saying thou shalt surely redeem, it says, in the firstling of unclean beasts shalt thou redeem. It's optional. That's why when you go back to Exodus 13, it was optional to redeem that unclean beast. But what does it say? And every firstling of an ass or a donkey, which is an unclean beast, it says, thou shalt redeem with the lamb. And if thou wilt not redeem it, then thou shalt break his neck. So what it's saying is, for the unclean beast, to redeem it, you would take a clean beast and sacrifice that clean beast unto the Lord in place for that unclean beast, because you're not going to sacrifice a unclean animal unto the Lord. So you would take a lamb and sacrifice it in place for that unclean animal. But if you didn't want to go through that process of redeeming that unclean animal to keep him, you had to break his neck. Because if you weren't going to make that payment unto the Lord for what he did during the time of Egypt, during the time of the Passover, you couldn't have that animal at all. You had to pay the Lord back for what he did. You had to make that redeeming. And so that goes into the third class, which, like I mentioned before, you had the firstborn male of clean animals, which, let's go back unto Numbers 18 and verse 17. Slakia. It says, but the firstling of a cow, or the firstling of a sheep, or the firstling of a goat, thou shalt not redeem. They are holy. Thou shalt sprinkle their blood upon the altar, and shalt burn their fat for an offering made by fire, for a sweet savor unto the Lord. So the firstling of your clean animals, you sacrificed them unto the Lord. You couldn't buy them back. You were supposed to bring them into the priest so that they could be sacrificed, because it belonged to the Most High. So for all three, of the firstborn son, the firstborn of clean animals, and the firstborn of unclean animals, you were paying the Lord in some fashion. For the clean animals, you were sacrificing them unto him, for a sweet savor. For your firstborn son, or your firstborn of the unclean animal, you had to pay the Lord by, giving them 5 shekels unto the priest. And this was a serious thing unto the Lord, because you had to recompense in some way for the protection that he gave during the Passover. So this is why, it says, it was required for your son, you gotta give them 5 shekels, and when the nation of Israel, when we were keeping the law, this was something that, we were doing. Everybody's firstborn son, you were supposed to go unto the priest and give them shekels, and of course, Yahweh Shai came in, we don't do that. Of course, now, Yahweh Shai gave us grace. We don't keep the law. We don't have to keep the law in its perfection for salvation. We aren't held under the standard of the law up to this point, because of the grace of Yahweh Shai and his sacrifice, which was a perfect sacrifice. But when we were keeping the law, this was a serious thing that we had to make that payment unto the Most High for what he did for us during the Passover, So that's all I want to bring out with this lesson. Hopefully it was edifying. I know it was kind of jumping around a bit, but I pray that it was edifying. Once again, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Baharuch HaKodash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS, and I want to give a salutation unto the elect. Hey, Shalom.